Thank you for staying with us. Kwara State is still grieving after the death of more than 100 persons during a boat mishap. The boat was said to be carrying over 250 persons, but due to the raining weather and overload, it capsized, claiming lives. The Kwara State Governor, Abdulrahman AbdulRazaq, with his delegation, visited affected communities in the incident, are promising to give about 1,000 life jackets to residents. He also noted that the government will ensure standard procedures for water travels to cover issues of boat serviceability, speed limits, loading limits, and wearing of life jackets by all passengers. Well, joining us via Zoom from Kwara State is the Chief Press Secretary to Kwara State Governor, Rafiu Ajakai. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. Right. We commiserate with the government of Kwara State on this very sad incident, and we hope that God will grant them the fortitude to bear this loss, especially the families. But let's get down to the developments with regards to this incident where over 100 persons passed. What is the update now? Because we have conflicting figures with regards to the number of persons who lost their lives. And there's also the talks about that search and rescue is still ongoing. Is there any updates with regards to that? Any more persons rescued or bodies found?
Well, thank you very much. What happened to us in Kwara State was truly a huge tragedy, and it's a prayer that Almighty God will prevent such from happening to us or any part of our country now or in the future. As regards the question you asked me about the update, His Excellency led a state delegation to the communities affected yesterday, and he visited the Itsupatigi, who then joined him along with some other top government functionaries to visit Kwara and some other communities affected in the unfortunate incident. Of course, His Excellency had interactions with families of the departed and some people who were actually involved, the survivors, in the unfortunate incident. At the moment, the figure from the local authorities, which is what we are relying on, is that 106 persons died in the incident. 106 people died in the incident, and 144 people survived in the unfortunate incident. That is the situation at the moment. Some of the people who were taken out from the river dead, they have been buried. On the part of Kwara at the moment, the information with us is that the search thing has been called off for now because some 250 people were reportedly on board the boat. And like I said, 144 people survived, whilst 106 people have been confirmed dead, and all of these people have been buried at different times. Some were buried on Monday night, some were buried on Tuesday.
We really feel sad about what has happened. In fact, from the reaction across the country, it tells that people are really concerned about what has happened in Kwara State. And our hearts go out to all of those the families who have suffered this loss. However, a lot of persons have concern with the way the government has neglected the regulation of the proper regulation of the waterways, transportation there, and not setting a template, regulating and enforcing standards that people are supposed to adhere to over the time. What do you say to this?
Well, I believe the issue of safety is something that has to be taken more seriously. If you look at the Nigerian law, you see that the responsibility to regulate inland waterways including water transport, water travel across the country, is vested in the National Inland Waterways Authority. And we believe that they will also do more to ensure safety. However, on our part, His Excellency, like I said, led the delegation to the communities yesterday, and some of the pronouncements he made is that the government will now be partnering more with the National Inland Waterways Authority and also borrow a template from states that have peculiarities that Kwara has, a state like Kwara, Lagos, I mean, which has a specific agency that deals with such matters. So very shortly, His Excellency said that a delegation from Kwara will be visiting Lagos to compare notes, to learn a few things from them on how they have been able to manage water travels successfully, like I say in Nigeria. So we want to borrow a template from that. Also, talking about safety, the government will become more stringent on the issue of safety, which is why he mentioned the introduction of SOPs, which will be rolled out in the coming days, if not weeks. This will prescribe what you must do if you want to travel on our waterways. It will also prescribe some kind of punishment for defaulters, anyone who refuses to adhere to such SOPs. Like I said, an agency is to be set up, which will go through the parliament. And then once we have such a law in place, some other things will also fall in places. And in the interim, the government is donating some 1,000 life jackets to particular local government alone, because when you look at Kwara State, Patigi and the local government appear to have the largest water body in the state in terms of how frequent people travel by water. So the government is donating 1,000 life jackets to them, alongside some other palliatives that will go to the families of the victims. So definitely the issue of safety is something that everyone must take more seriously, particularly when you listen to the stories of how the whole thing happened. Boils down to scanty regard for safety, because from what we heard, none of them on board actually used a life jacket, which is quite unfortunate. But this is not the time to throw blames around. This is the time for us to empathize with one another, because what has happened would have happened to just anyone. So at the moment, what we are trying to do is to mitigate what has happened. I mean, particularly to bring succor to the victims, their families, to commiserate with them, to stand by them at this time, and going forward to introduce a regime of stringent measures that will prevent such a thing from happening in the future.
Right. As much as no one or nobody wants to throw blames at anyone, someone must be held responsible. And as much as this can happen to anyone, it can also be avoided. That's what a majority of Nigerians are saying. And so my question is, what's the level of engagement with these persons who ply these waterways, especially educating them with regards to the matters of safety and safety measures to ensure that no life or incidents like this happen?
Well, quite frankly, when events happen, as human beings, we take lessons from them. And what has happened in Kwara State means that we need to take the issue of safety more seriously. It has dawned on everyone now, that if you want to travel by water, you need to take certain steps. Like I said, the governor has made it very clear during his visit yesterday that we will not tolerate anyone traveling on our waterways without using life jackets, which is why the government is setting the right example. I mean, it's making it easy by donating life jackets, 1,000 life jackets
As much
Patigi
as the
local
government
community.
wants to donate life jackets, the persons these life jackets are being given must understand why they are given these life jackets. Because if you do not educate them, they may not see the need for it. That's the question I'm asking. What is the level of engagement and educating them on the use of the life jacket and other safety measures to ensure that incidents like this never happens?
I think that's a moot point. Everyone has seen what has happened. And like I said yesterday, when His Excellency visited, he stressed the need for everyone to adhere to safety protocols. And going forward, we'll be working with local authorities, particularly the traditional institutions and people who are involved in that business to ensure that the right things are done. I also mentioned that the government is sending to the parliament a proposed legislation that imposes punishment for anyone who defaults in that regard. We'll continue to engage with our people, we'll continue to mount serious campaigns to emphasize the need for safety.
All right, we're glad to hear Kwara State will be engaging Lagos State to understudy the template that Lagos has when it comes to the safety about water and all the regulations around it. But following this incident, has there been any restriction to water transportation in the area that is affected so far as a way of keeping everyone safe?
Well, the thing is that the government is working with the local authorities. A calamity has just occurred, and we all know exactly why it happened. One, people traveled without using life jackets, and that subjected them to all manners of troubles. Now, going forward, that is no longer going to be allowed. You are not going to be allowed to travel on our waterways without using life jackets. That is one. Secondly, the government is also considering banning live travels. That incident occurred at night, which means people did not adhere to safety measures. So government is looking at the possibility of banning live travels, particularly on our waterways. But you see, just like the second anchor mentioned, there is a need for enlightenment, there is a need for proper engagement. When you want to introduce some measures to human beings, you need to properly engage them, and that is what has started. We'll continue to do that. In the interim, definitely nobody will be allowed to travel on our waterways without using life jacket and adhering to all safety protocols. Of course, government has also made it very clear that canoes that are not fit to travel should never be allowed to travel again, because when you look at the incident, the canoe actually broke into two parts just few minutes into the travel, and that's as a result of overloading, as a result of the age of the canoe itself, and the fact that too many people were there when they are not supposed to be there.
A really, really sad one. And now that you give us a picture of what it looks like, it's quite concerning and worrisome, because I was also going to ask that you give us a sense of what these persons use as a means of transporting that large number of persons from Patigi into Kwara State.
Well, Patigi is in Kwara State. I think these persons were actually traveling back to Kwara State. I mean, they were traveling from a Goti community, which is in Niger State, back to Patigi, which is in Kwara State. If you know that terrain very well, you will see that these are brothers, they are kinsmen, divided by accident of state creation and whatever, because this is entirely Nupe territory. These are kinsmen traveling from one place to the other, attending weddings of cousins, what have you, family members. So they were actually traveling back to to Kwara State when the incident happened. Like I said, it's quite unfortunate, and everyone has learned more lessons, and definitely a new regime of accountability has come to stay.
Rafiu, talk to us about the issue of phasing out this kind of boats that have either they are old or wooden boats at times like this where they can't stand the test of time. Is there a plan by government to phase them out and provide some modern boats that can take people properly and ensure safety?
So the truth of the matter, quite frankly, is that we are evolving in terms of water travel in the state for a very long time. There doesn't appear to be any protocol that regulates that. Although when you look at Kwara itself, you will see that apart from the part where you have River Niger, it's likely an area where people travel by road. So water travel is only popular in that axis. And like I said, going forward with the government introducing a formal law for the first time regulating water travel, all of these things will come into play. The kind of canoe you can use, boat, and all of those things will be prescribed. And definitely the agency that will be working with NEMA will ensure that nothing contrary to what is contained in the law is allowed.
Earlier you mentioned that you would want the government, the Kwara State government will be partnering with the inland waterways, the federal inland waterways, and you want them to do more. I am wondering what more you expect them as the state government looks at partnering with them.
Well, like I said, water travel needs to be properly formalized in Kwara, like you have in Lagos State. The standard of water travel in Lagos definitely cannot be compared to what you have here. We want to get to that level. And we will need NEMA, that is National Inland Waterways, that's NEWA, to work closely with the state government and, of course, with the local authorities that are concerned. I mean, the boat owners, those who operate canoes, and appropriate government agencies at the state level to work hand in hand to ensure that there is respect for safety.
All right, Rafi, give us a sense of how the government is engaging families of those who have suffered these casualties now.
I'm struggling to hear you. I'm not sure I heard your last question.
Okay, I'm asking, give us a sense of how government is engaging the families of those who have died. Is there any engagement from government so far in that regard?
So the governor, like I said, visited the communities affected, particularly at their local headquarters. I mean, cultural headquarters yesterday, and whilst there, along with the senator representing Kwara North, some state lawmakers and the SU Patigi, the governor announced some support for the families alongside the life jacket that the government will be donating to them. And then from time to time, some other palliatives that have to be given, government will not stop from doing that. Government will not fail to do that.
Now, the president has asked for a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding this boat accident.
I'm not sure I heard you, please.
All right. I said the president has asked for a thorough investigation into what caused this incident. And I am wondering if there's been some sort of arrest, so to speak, with regards to the persons involved with what transpired, this incident that happened.
Well, we have taken on board the advisory of Mr. President, and Part of the steps to be taken is what the governor did yesterday by visiting the communities, interacting with the people. You got to hear what actually led to the unfortunate incident, and all of those things will definitely form a report that the government will be acting upon. Of course, the communities will also be part of the legislation that the government will be sending to the parliament. The local authorities led by the Esu Patigi, who has been very, very involved since the unfortunate incident, the local authorities will be working with the state government to ensure that all of the feedbacks that we had from the victims, their families, and local authorities who are involved in water travel, all of these things will definitely form a report that the government will act upon. That's a form of investigating into the remote and immediate causes of the accident.
All right, talking about the legal framework for waterway transport in Kwara State, as well as sending the engagement between Kwara State and Lagos State to understudy what Lagos has, what time frame are you looking at for all of these to come upstream? Because as it is right now, if people are still going to travel, there has to be an urgent way of approaching this issue so people don't fall victim again. What's the time frame that we're looking at?
Well, very shortly. Very shortly. I'm not going to say in 1 week, in 2 weeks, but very, very shortly. Something that has to be done as soon as possible.
Right. I'm not sure. Okay. Now we have talked about the matter of educating these people. I would like for you to give us an insight into perhaps what plans the government has with regards to monitoring this movement across the waterways. Just some insight.
The best way to engage local people at the grassroots, is by forming a very strong synergy with the traditional institutions, traditional and religious institutions. In this case, I mentioned before that the government is working very closely with the Esu Patigi, who is the paramount traditional ruler in that axis, to ensure that all the local chiefs, all the local influencers, all the local stakeholders are brought on board and everyone buy into what the government is saying with regards to safety. Apart from that, government is also going to deploy mass media to educate our people on the need to adhere to safety protocols while travel, not just on water, even on the road. So all of these things will be considered. Government is not going to take it lying low. Government will do everything that is possible to ensure that everybody gets to hear the danger of traveling on our waterways without using life jacket or even traveling in a rickety boat. So all of these things will be done as soon as possible, working with the local institutions.
All right, the rains are here and water levels have risen so far. Give us a sense of how the rains are affecting agricultural activity, especially in the local governments that you say have the highest level of water bodies, and how is also how flooding, if at all, it's also affected there. Can you let us know how that is going?
Living on the bank of River Niger have long been vulnerable, particularly during rainy season. What government does is to continue to educate our people on the need to prioritize their safety. We can only do anything when we are alive. So government is very, very strong in telling our people that you can only farm, you can only do whatever you want to do when you are alive. So you have to prioritize safety every time. Our government also continues to support them in whatever way to boost their farming. For instance, government has invested so much in irrigation to ensure that you have year-round farming. But importantly, The government of Kwara State will continue to engage the federal government. We have a new federal government now. One of the priorities of the governor is to appeal to Mr. President and, of course, the National Assembly that has the power of the purse to ensure that enough fund is allocated to the dredging of the River Niger. That is the ultimate solution as far as flooding in that axis is concerned. So the government is very, very concerned on the need for the federal government and some other supporters to support the immediate dredging of the River Niger. Unless and until that is done, the perennial flooding you have in that axis will continue because it is just natural. Government, like I said, is very, very passionate about that, and it will do everything possible to ensure that communities living around the bank of River Niger are protected, that they are not forced to leave their ancestral lands, and that can only happen when we dredge the River Niger, and then it also provides new windows of economic opportunities in that axis of the state, and even in some neighboring states like Niger, Kogi, and others.
Interesting. Right. Now, I just want to get a sense of, we hear that the government is also looking at penalties. If you have an insight into what the penalties would be for persons who flout the codes that the government or the measures that the government will put in place to addressing these issues of mishaps with regards to water transportation.
Well, I would not like to jump the gun here. Like I said, before government will want to impose penalties and punishment, whatever you may call it, the government will go to the parliament first. So whatever proposals will be submitted to the parliament for their approval, because they are the representatives of our people. Once that is approved, of course, the law will come on stream and everybody will be properly guided. Until then, we'll continue to enlighten our people, educate them, to tell them the dangers of traveling without adhering to safety protocols.
Right. We must thank you, Chief Press Secretary to Kwara State Governor Rafiu Ajakaye, for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.